All right, everyone have your lunch? Are you back? So when you go back through the alliance real quick, guys, this is what you committed to. If you weren't here, they committed to it on your behalf. So thank you for yours. We're asking that you all be present, participate. It's a lot more fun than you do. Topless, please keep your shirts on, but we need, let's keep, if you have laptops, let's keep them shut. If you've got business to attend to, that's fine. Just politely remove yourself from the room, take care of business, come back when you're ready. Okay? And then respect other people's perspectives. Very good? Yeah? So real quick, if you're new, I'm Chris Dunn. I'm not new. I've been here all day. I'll be here the rest of the day and this afternoon. I work for Nelnet, in case you did not know. Okay. This is Erin Bolt. She's both the admin coaches, so I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about team toxins and conflict today. So you guys ready to get into some conflict?
Yeah, ready.
I don't want it.
I'm uncomfortable.
Don't make me, but I'll get out the box of gloves. All right, so what are the effects of toxins? If left unchecked, toxins will lead to create negative conflict. Right? We all understand what a toxin is. When you think of toxin, what do you think of? Never anything good, right? It's poison. And so you can't just let it linger. They tend to do what? What happens? They fester. It gets worse. It spreads. Okay? So prepare yourselves, and that's what we're here to do today. To be aware. Be aware of who you are. I can't control other people, but I can control. I have choices for how I behave, right? And so be aware of who you are. So I'm going to walk through, set this up, and then we'll do a couple different exercises. Like many things that we coach, it seems as if things are always in four quadrants. Maybe it's easier for us to think of it that way, but they're in four quadrants. So the team toxins that we're referring to are stonewall, defensiveness, blaming, and contempt. You guys familiar with these terms? You guys observe these things? Am I observing some of it now? So stonewalling is some descriptions of it: withdrawal, disengagement, avoidance. How might you see stonewalling? Besides that, what are some other examples of it? What I like is when I have someone that's engaged in a conversation, then all of a sudden they pick up their phone, and that's where they are. That's stonewalling, big time, right? They're done. Got nothing else to offer. But yeah. But defensiveness, not open to influence, refusal to take responsibility, not supportive, or feeling of not being supported or safe. What's that? So that's defensive, and then quickly leads to blaming, like it's not on the UACs, man. So-and-so should put him on the card, right? So we get into blaming. Harsh startup, bullying, domination, personal attacks. Harsh startup, you may understand what that might mean? Starting the conversation with maybe sarcasm or criticism. It's not a good way to start a conversation, right? So you get straight into blaming right then and there. And you can see if you kind of play these with one another and you start thinking about different examples of how they might show themselves, how one might lead to another, or behaviors lead to one, different behaviors, contempt, sarcasm, demeaning gossip. How about eye rolling? That's my favorite. I saw a meme on Facebook or something where it said, my eye muscles, something about this is the strongest muscle because I exercise my eye rolling every day. Undermine. Guys, one thing I want to note here, I see a lot of head nodding. These are normal, right? It doesn't make us bad people, but these are normal behaviors. What's bad is about how we respond to some of these things and how we deal with it. And so we're going to talk about some ways to address this in just a moment. But think about these and who you are. So I said one of the things we want to understand is be aware of who we are, right? I can't control how Nick responds to different things, but I can be aware of who I am and how I might respond. And I have a choice to make on how I respond to how he speaks to me or how he acts within my team environment or whatever. But think about who you are. I put some name tags on your desk or on your tables. This is hello. My name is. I want you to think about your go-to position. We all have one. We start at one of these. If you're being honest, I'm going to be honest for a moment. I'm going to write on mine that I'm defensive. That's my go-to. That's where I'll go to right away. And if I'm being honest, I'm going to say, well, it's hard for me to choose because I might back a cycle. I'll go to defensive, we get into some dialogue, then I go to blaming, and typically I won't go to contempt, but I might go to stonewall, and I'm done. Right? So we might go through the cycle a little bit, but again, this is about being aware of who we are. So take a moment, think about your go-to position, pick one, write it down, and wear it. All right. Easy or hard? Hard to pick one. Look around, and if you feel comfortable, introduce yourself and how that might present itself in a social interaction, whether it be professionally or personally, how you might go to defensive or whichever one you chose. Take a moment and do that. Introduce yourselves. Hi, my name is defensive.
Get up and introduce yourself to these three different people. Get up, guys.
Sarcasm is more my
Very nice to meet you. I can relate. Yeah. We're twins, I can see it.
very simple exercise.
We're not alone.
You're not alone. Right?
It's hard to categorize yourself into just one.
Hard, yeah.
There's a lot of it can depend on your mood of that day or whatever. And
Absolutely. You have a lot of outside influences that will dictate which position you'll take. And that's a key point in dealing with some of these, is understanding that we all come from different perspectives, different walks of life, different challenges outside of the office. But we bring them in. We bring them here. We're human beings, right? And we're here part of the day, a large part of the day, but we bring all that outside stuff here, and we may respond differently one day than the next. We're weird creatures that way, but we're human, right?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Same day. This person pushes this button, that person pushes that button.
Right. So we're human. Just remember, toxins are normal, but what we're not saying is it's not an excuse to tolerate it or excuse it, right? But we talked about that right out of the gate. It tends to get worse if you do that. And here's a key point. Diagnose yourself, not others. You know, I had some conversations with some of my kin, as my defensive kin, and what I found in those brief interactions is that we got to defensive for the very same reasons. Is I feel like I did my best, I put my best foot forward, and then you started asking questions which I perceived as you attacking me, or challenging me, right? Or telling me I'm wrong, or whatever. They're all different forms of it. And so I get into this very defensive posture, and I start to explain why I have this position. And it comes across as defensive. Then when I'm told I'm not right, I go straight to blame. Well, so-and-so. But I might go there. But what's important is I need to diagnose myself, not necessarily, you know, I made an assumption you were attacking me, right? So I started diagnosing you came to me as a part of your startup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So be careful with that. So let's talk about some antidotes. So what are some things you can do to counter some of these toxins, right? So for stonewalling, be transparent. Maybe there's mediation or professional coaching. Sometimes you need a third party, right, to help you work through that. Defensive, curious. Right? If you take the example I was using for myself around why I might get defensive, and I'm thinking maybe I'm being attacked, I should start asking questions about where is this question coming from? You know, what is your position on this versus going straight to offensive? Might be a way to approach that. Blaming curiosity, soft startup. So I was talking about a harsh startup. Opposite would be a soft startup. So don't start off with criticism, sarcasm. Make sure you engage in that conversation the right way. And these are learned behaviors too, right? So if Ab and I are in conversation and I start to sense that she's getting defensive, I might pause for a moment. But I've worked with her for a while and I've learned that from her and I understand that she's there and I've recognized that. But again, I don't want to diagnose her. I might say, hey, Ab, I feel like you're getting defensive. Am I off? If I am, I'll move on, but it feels this way. Yes?
What did you say about the 2%?
There's 2% truth to everything. I might add that to maybe it's 20%, maybe there's zero there. But the words that we use sometimes, there's a level of truth to everything we say. So meet that with some curiosity. It's kind of, does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Contempt. An antidote for contempt, personal development, coaching, emotional intelligence, respectful communication should go without saying. Respectful communication should occur. Okay? So if you're witnessing contempt, again, let's say we're in a discussion with one another and you start to eye roll. Do I get your body out and go with, what the heck was that for? that might not be respectful. Maybe a better way would be, hey, something I said just feels like it just eye rolled. What did I do that made you go there? What triggered you to get there, right? So approach it a little bit differently. It's the same thing, but approach it differently with curiosity, with, I felt as if you went here, what happened? Start asking questions. Okay? So toxins lead to toxins, and then we get into conflict, which is always fun. Let me ask you a question real quick. Is there such a thing as, so when we think of conflict, we always go to the negative. Is there a positive conflict? Or constructive, maybe? Yeah, conflict's a good thing, right? Conflict's a desire for something to change. And that change oftentimes brings really good things to teams. Maybe it's an enhanced process or a more efficient process. But the conflict that got us to resolve that was we're struggling. We're arguing with one another maybe. But as long as we're doing it, maybe not arguing is a bad word, but if we're at least having a conversation, working through it and going, this is painful because, what can we do differently? Collaborating with one another and getting to a point where we make a change. Now we have a positive result from that, right? So blaming leads to defensiveness. Blaming leads to more blame. One of the we talked about a little bit, we hit on trust a little bit, but the lack of trust leads to more distrust. It's that type of thing. Lots of toxic behaviors without intervention will lead to more. And it just spins out of control. And then ultimately we're in some really negative conflict. So again, there's lots of causes for it, and oftentimes we don't necessarily know where it comes from, the outside influences, etc. The frustration may cause that there's a lack of power, whether it's real or perceived. There's maybe a loss of power or lack of power there within. An example that might be, if I give my opinion on how something should work, and nobody takes that thought and does anything with it, well, I feel like I have no power or no ability to make change within this team. Right? So talking through that, working with the team, again, with respect, etc. Inability to affect change and lack of safety. So I need 3 volunteers. We're going to try something. I need 3 brave souls to come up to the front. You don't know what you're volunteering yet for, so come on up. Need 3. Need 1 more. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of role play here. So I'm going to give you each a role to play. You play role number 1. I want you to read it. Think about who you're going to be. 2. And there's a 4th role, and all of you guys play this role. You are all team members, these guys, and we're having a discussion around how to approach the implementation of such a product. Okay? You guys are team members, so naturally you're going to feel how you feel. You're going to sense some things. You may even feel the need to interject. I'm going to ask you not to yet. I want this scene to play out. They're going to have a little fun with it, hopefully. And if they're doing it right, you guys will feel real uncomfortable. Okay, I'm in. So once these guys go through a little bit, we'll cut the scene off because I imagine they're going to have way too much fun. I'll have to get them to stop, and then we'll debrief as a group. And I want you guys as team members, imagine yourself as being on this team. I'm going to listen to some conversation from you guys. Okay? So I stalled enough for you guys to get into character, get into the role. You guys ready? You know what you want to do?
Sorry, what?
She's ready. And action.
So we're just going to scrap that old version.
plus passive version we're worried about, that's what we're going with. We're gonna push that one through, it's gonna improve it.
That seems like a great idea. We have so much stuff that already works so well. I really like what we have. Let's just improve on it.
I don't think it'll work. You know, we can't Band-Aid anymore, we have to go with this new method.
I don't know, it's just, we spent so much time working on this, just to throw it away. It doesn't make sense.
Obviously technical debt, no one else is seeing it. God, no, this is.
I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but it's here already.
All right. Let's stop there. What do you guys observe?
Heather's being normal.
Hold on, what's that?
Heather's being Heather. John, look at John's face.
Did you give her a card too?
So what was her role?
She would draw, I don't think she was ever there.
Well, it says your idea, you don't have any ideas to share. Or do you care to?
Oh, so she's the P up. What was the last thing? What was the last thing on that card?
You are a disengaged team member. You are just as happy to check out Facebook on your phone as to care about the discussion, let alone the decision that will be made.
Have we seen that? You guys seen that on Teams?
Yes.
What do you do about it?
What are you asking, what you should do or what do we do?
Well, what should you do?
We should call them out.
That's sort of big, rather than saying they're not being engaged, but that's what you said.
See, that's trying to get that right.
Well, but sometimes it's obvious they're unengaged, and then sometimes it's not obvious until 3 days later when you're like, we talked about that in the meeting the other day, where were you? Because you were here, but you weren't really here. And so it's not obvious that they're engaged at that minute.
So I love what you said. Have we had the courage to say that to team members? Because the way you said it, I didn't feel any, huge anger or it was disrespectful. It was like, I thought you were, but I mean, where were you? Because clearly there's a disconnect, or however you said it way more eloquently than I did, right? But the point is that it was done respectfully. And it was a call out to the individual saying, really, without saying it, it's a call out to say, we need you here. We need your skills on this team. There's a reason you're here. We need your help. What's wrong with saying that?
That we don't like them.
Why should that cause conflict?
You said that you thought it didn't sound mean,
There's a perceived-
and I felt like it was mean when I said it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I
There's a
do.
perceived
You know what I'm
notion that
saying?
there will be conflict.
So let's hit these two. What's going on here? Let's get the audience's perspective before they share what the card said.
He already had his mind made up on what was gonna happen, so.
This guy?
Yeah, I don't know his name,
Dan?
I'm sorry. What is it?
Dan?
Yeah, Dan, so he was not willing to be influenced at all on
Yeah, he had his mind made up. He's passionate about his idea. We talked about servant leadership. Passion's a good thing. He's passionate. Give him that.
Wasn't a good listener.
He wasn't a good listener. He was closed. He didn't care what anybody else had to say. He was really passionate about what he had to say. He aced it. Seems like you've had practice. How about you, sir?
So my role was that there are already existing pieces that are highly functional, reusable, and scalable, and that I wanted to leverage that work. It's kind of interesting in how you're using collective.
My card read, scrap the old implementation, create brand new. We use nothing that exists today as it would create too much overhead to figure it all out. You read the article on the flux capacitor, how to build this quickly with a lot of scalability. Even though you've not explored this idea fully, you are convinced this is the approach to take. Passionate about your idea. In fact, there's no idea better than yours. And therefore closed to other perspectives. You may express your closed-mindedness to your teammates. Eye rolling, folding arms, turn your back, a harsh response, etc.
Did you guys catch the turn your back?
Yeah.
That made me feel a little uncomfortable. I was like, well, what do I do here? Did you get the sense, what did you see? Okay, sorry about that. Did you guys get the sense he was trying to bring in some ideas to collaborate?
I kind of felt like he was more Mr. Status Quo.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, maybe that was my interpretation.
Okay. How'd the rest of you feel?
I think he was listening and making good arguments why what he thinks is good. That there may be some options there, but.
He's trying to make a discussion out of it instead of saying, you're wrong.
Yeah.
He was listening, but he also was holding pretty steady on his opinion as well.
Yeah. And I like the idea. You're like, well, we've got all this great stuff. Why would you throw it away? It works. But let's try to incorporate some of these new ideas that you read in an article that nobody's tried ever. That sounds good. All right, you guys, thank you for playing. Did you guys see Toxins? Can I come out a little bit? We saw the turning of the back. There's a bit of a stone wall. He was done with the conversation, didn't want to engage anymore.
Heather's faces were great.
Yeah.
I should have stood back here, but I'm sure they were. I've seen them.
Was that an eye roll?
I was exercising.
Yeah.
What else did you guys witness in that? How might you bring some of those behaviors out? I mean, we talked a little bit. I think you were asking questions. Is where you were going.
Try to bring them in.
Yeah. Try to bring them in. You know, maybe if I were one of the team members, I might have said, I sensed personally, just watching that, is that these two guys are an impasse. I'm not sure we're going to get through this. Shlomo may have, because he was willing to bring in other ideas. Daniel wasn't. But Shlomo may have turned to Heather and said, hey, what do you think? Right? Again, trying to get her into the conversation, and maybe that'll help one position or another. But I want to at least try to engage her because she's not part of the team at that moment in time, right? So if I let that go on, or if you guys let that go on as team members, how do you feel? All of it. How do you feel? Yes, team members, you guys are going, come on, guys, seriously. Right. So how do we deal with it? So work on yourself. You know, this is.
I have a quick question. I'm curious how this changes or how it evolves or what the difference is between this in an agile methodology versus, I mean, I've seen this in every situation from, you know, a waterfall in a banking place or an insurance place or in a very agile ad shop. I've seen exactly the same thing. I'm curious, what's the difference with it dealing with agile methodology versus all the other ways that you can handle it?
So this type of information can work at home, right? It has
Right.
nothing to do with Agile.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with traditional. Although, because we ask our Agile teams to collaborate with one another at a much higher level than, say, traditional methodologies, these toxins will, it quells the collaboration and the teamwork, right?
So because there's more of a passionate, because you should be dealing with a more passionate group of developers, testers, whatever, then you'll have more people with more opinions and thus more conflict?
Well, our hope is yes.
Okay.
But regardless of how you're working, whether you're doing traditional waterfall methodologies, whether you're doing Agile frameworks or methodologies, whether you're dealing with personal relationships, all these things matter in order to have good conversation and have healthy conversation. Because dealing with toxins or dealing with conflict's not easy. most of us avoid it, me included,
Right.
avoid it like the plague. But that never serves us well in teams, right? Never serves us well in personal relationships. So we have to hit these head on. So appreciate the question. It's not necessarily directly tied to, but it does apply to everything that we do and how we interact and work with one another.
Would you say when you did experience these things in a traditional, was the expectation in a traditional framework methodology that the team addresses it, or that their PM or their leader addresses it? Because I think that's the only slightly different thing that I can see, that as a whole, the framework says all teams in the self-organizing model, that the teammates should be holding each other accountable. I think in traditional, if it was a good team, they were holding each other accountable, but I think it led itself potentially to more the command and control, where it was expected that if I was having a conflict with Robert, that I would talk to my leader, and my leader would talk to Robert and tell him to stop, being defensive or stonewalling or whatever my complaint was on him. And so
Right.
I think that in traditional, it's very easy to say, hey, as a team, we need to have teamwork and we need to not treat each other this way. So I think you can do it within that, but it also has that scapegoat of having somebody above you responsible for the overall
Sure.
project.
I think
So I
it's
think
a
that's
big
really
thing. It
different.
doesn't actually, when I've been working with Agile methodology, the difference was responsibility, right? It didn't have to do with conflict resolution at all. It had to do with, at the end of it, do you agree to do something because you think it's the right thing and you've convinced people that it's the right thing, and you say it's going to get done, and so it's your responsibility and your onus then to get passionate enough to fix that? Or is it the responsibility of a more traditional system where you'd go to your manager, your boss, and they would say, I'm taking the responsibility for whatever it happens to be, and you handle the conflict resolution differently than this?
I think what makes it a lot different in Agile, if you're trying to, if you have retrospectives, usually every week or every 2 weeks, whatever it is, so there's like continuous feedback amongst the team where you're going to resolve those conflicts, or hopefully talk about them at that point. And waterfall methodology, you just go on. You can go
Do it at the end.
forever without ever talking to each other about conflict, and just festers, and you hope that in retrospective, Kaizens or whatnot, that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Agile's about continuous improvement, right? And the personal project team is done when the project's over. So there's no impetus to really get better. You got what you got.
Yeah, because the reality is, at the end of this project, we're probably not going to work together, so whatever, I can move on, right?
Right.
Whereas in an Agile team, in theory, we keep them together project after project or work item after work item. So we need to resolve these things in a more proactive manner. How many of you have working agreements with your teams? Okay, that's awesome. How many of you have a conflict protocol? You guys do. So as you work through, as you build your working agreements, and this hits to your point or your question, is how do you guys need to agree on some of these things? How do we interact? What's okay? What's not okay? What are some of our meeting norms? What are our behavioral norms? And that's what we're hitting here. Is in working agreements, ask questions. What can I be counted on for? Or when I assume, and I highlighted that, right? When I assume you're stressed, how would you like for me to ask about it? Again, diagnose yourself, not others, right? So, Chia, you seem like you're stressed with what I just said. How should I respond? What is the best way for me to respond when I assume you're stressed? You're like, no, I'm relaxed, I'm cool. But when I assume that, how would you like me to respond? And some people might say, in the moment. And then there's a responsibility. I want to remind you guys of that if you say, I want you to call me out in the moment, right? That's an easy thing to say. It's a harder thing to receive. Call me out in the moment. I asked you to do that, and then when you did it, I went, I didn't feel good. Not sure I like that. Can I adjust my working agreement? Absolutely. Let's adjust that. But so when I assume you're stressed, how would you like me? So have those conversations up front. Yes?
So maybe I'm a little bit confused about working agreements and the ones that I've seen, and maybe ours is, you know, whatever. I've not seen one that goes down to that detail. It's like pretty more standard about, like, we're gonna get out of our meetings, we're gonna like not go on our laptops. I mean, I've never seen, you know, that when Mary is in a tiff, we're gonna all sing Kumbaya or something. So,
Yeah, and I think most teams go that route. It's easier to do that. It's hard to talk about these things, right?
okay.
So is this your conflict or is this your working agreement? You said
Hang on, yes.
Okay.
Working agreements, conflict protocol, these are some of the behavioral things that we want to discuss. So maybe, how will I know you're stuck, right? What are the signs that I know you're stuck? That's a good question to ask of your teammates, right? Because we might express that in a different way. Maybe I'll stonewall. Someone might perceive that as a very negative toxin, right? But no. When I shut up, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Those of you know, we know that's true. If I shut up, something's
Seriously wrong.
seriously wrong.
Seriously.
I'm probably stuck, right? So these are some good questions.